Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Critical Conversations in LIS series, celebrating Black men in librarianship. My name is Nicole Cook, and I am the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair and Professor at the University of South Carolina. We are so grateful to have you all here with us today. We have a great session in store for you today, and we're excited to have you participate. So I'm going to turn it over to Sierra Harris, the Augusta Baker GA, for some housekeeping and introductions. Welcome.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another amazing session. As Dr. Cook said, I'm Sierra, and today I have the immense pleasure of introducing our lovely speakers today. Before we get started, I want to go over some quick Zoom housekeeping details. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be sent to every registered guest at the conclusion of the session. We ask that you mute yourself, and we also ask that you turn your camera off during today's presentation, but utilize the chat to ask questions and engage throughout. There will be a time where you will be encouraged to unmute yourself and ask questions. So now on to the good stuff. Our featured guest today is Shamichael Hallman. Shamichael serves as the Director of Civic Health and Economic Opportunity at Urban Libraries Council, an innovation and action tank of North America's leading public library systems. In this role, he's working to advance conversations about public libraries as essential city and council infrastructure, including their value as physical space and a connector of diverse lived experiences. From 2017 to 2022, he served as the Senior Library Manager of the historic Cosset Library in Memphis, tasked with overseeing the multi-million-dollar renovation of this space, which reimagined the roles that a branch library could play in the community. During his tenure with Memphis Public Libraries, the library system was awarded the 2021 National Medal for Museum and Library Science by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and was recognized as the nation's most innovative public library by Smithsonian Magazine in November of 2021. His 2020 TED Talk, Reimagining the Public Library to Reconnect the Community, garnered international attention among librarians and social innovators. That was where I was introduced to Shamichael. Shamichael was a contributor to the book, The Marketing of Academic, National, and Public Libraries Worldwide, and is the author of a forthcoming book, Meet Me at the Library, which explores the importance and capacity of public libraries in addressing issues of loneliness in the US. He holds an MS in nonprofit leadership from the University of Pennsylvania and was a 2023 visiting Loeb Fellow at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard University. Wow. And today's session will be moderated by someone that I think is a friend, Ray Turner. Ray Turner is the branch manager for the Otranto Road Library branch of the Charleston County Public Library System in Charleston, South Carolina. His professional affiliations include the Beta Omega chapter of Beta Phi Mu, the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, and the South Carolina Library Association, the National Advisory Council at the University of South Carolina, the School of Library Information Science at the University of South Carolina, and he has contributed to the American Library Association. Ray Turner is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, where he serves as the executive director for the South Carolina chapters of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Let's welcome Shamichael and Ray.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of this wonderful series. Augusta Baker's Endowed Chair presents Critical Conversations, Celebrating Black Men in Librarianship. As a Black male librarian from Charleston County Public Library in North Charleston, South Carolina, it's my pleasure to moderate today's lecture for you. I want to applaud Dr. Nicole Cook, the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair for this series. It has brought together some awesome Black male librarians who are doing excellent work in the field. We've had Dr. Jerome Alford, mover and shaker Jamar Ramin, Kevin Watson from the Las Vegas Clark County Library, and today we have Shamichael Hallman, the Director of Civic Health and Economic Opportunity at the Urban Library Councils. So, sir, how are you doing today?
Mr. Turner, I am doing well. It is a honor to be with you all, and just a big thanks to Dr. Cook for the invitation.
Excellent, excellent. Now I'm an honest person from the get-go. I must tell you, I didn't know a lot about you and the work that you've been doing, but I have been doing some research on you, and I'm most impressed with all the things that you have done and are doing. And so, do you mind if we just jump into some questions and get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, good, good. So, from my research, I see that you have a unique background working with large public spaces. One of those spaces has not always been a library setting. Would you share with us your personal work-life journey and how this journey has led you into librarianship?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. The library profession, I think, chose me rather than me choosing it. I did my undergraduate studies in the state of Alabama, where I was born and raised. I have an associate's degree in computer networking and a bachelor's in business. And coming out of undergraduate studies, I worked for a regional bank on the internet banking platform. And so got to see both sort of hardware and software operations in a fairly large financial system. And on the weekends and evenings, I served as a youth minister at a growing church. And I did both of those things for about 7 years until I got a call from a multi-location mega church in Memphis that said, hey, we will combine your love of faith and technology and put it into one role. And so in 2010, I moved to Memphis, which was probably one of the best decisions I made from a professional aspect. And at this church, I was sort of both thinking about technology and sort of how it affected and implicated faith. So we were doing things around mobile giving, around mobile apps, building online faith communities, and trying to figure out, how we could use faith to influence and sort of shape spiritual life. But I was also in a pastoral capacity. And I think, the church sort of uniquely equips us in many ways for life. It was at this church that I started to really understand how to craft a vision and how to communicate it and how to execute it under Senior Pastor Dr. Stacy Spencer, who's still doing really amazing work in Memphis. I got to see what it was like to get outside of the church, to move outside of the four walls, and to do pop-up churches in parking lots and in parks. I got to sort of understand how to meet people where they were on their learning journey, right? And so whether it was someone who was sort of new to the faith or someone who had been attending church all their life, like, how do you create sort of dynamic experiences that speak to people wherever they are? And so, the sort of combination of those things really, I think, equipped me to be able to step into libraries and bring a lot of that, that sort of knowledge and understanding of sort of how you be fully present in the community. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds most interesting. I always tell people that the one wonderful thing about working in a library, you can bring all the things that have made you up into that space, and it works somehow. So I just wanted you to share with the folks in attendance your unique beginning. So I think, no matter where you are in society, the things that you bring forth can come and it can mesh with the library world. And I think that's the greatest thing about our job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I was blessed really to be able to have the opportunity. I mean, I recognize that my path was very unique, right? I don't think, leaving church and going into a branch manager role immediately is generally the path that most people take,
Mhm.
I think that there was really just sort of a divine movement there. But once I got there, the leadership at Memphis Public Library, they have some really great training. And I think being able to bring the skills and experience that I had and to get the training that they had, and they paired me with some really great librarians, it just worked out. It just worked for me. And I'm forever grateful to Director Keenan McCloy and the entire team at Memphis Public Library System for what they allowed me to do there.
So, what motivated you as a Black man to follow this career path even more? Because you moved on from Memphis Libraries, now you're at the Urban Libraries Council. What's been your motivation?
Yeah, well, once I stepped into the role with Memphis Public Libraries, I started to realize just how much the similarities were between the church and the library, particularly as we think about serving, urban Black context, right? And it was really interesting to me to think that many of the things that we were doing within the church space around economic opportunity, around literacy, around lifelong learning, the library was also doing those things, and that we actually were not doing them with each other, right? And so I started to begin to think about what does it look like, for sort of robust partnerships to form there, where the library doesn't lose its civicness and the church doesn't lose its sacredness. Like where's that sort of space where we're working together to really equip and empower our communities? And so that, I think, really just got me interested. And then, of course, as I started, sitting with and learning from the librarians and learning technical aspects of it and learning all of the sort of many ways that the library was trying to live out its strategic plan in the community, I just really excited me, and I knew that I could bring my nonprofit experience to that, organization and just do even greater work. So again, it really worked out, and I'm so grateful for all the things that we were able to do there.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds exciting. Now, one of my favorite people is the great Maya Angelou. And she has the saying where she says, we should all know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all threads of that tapestry are equal in value, no matter of the color found within the threads. In today's political climate, we can't say that everyone in America agrees with that eloquent statement from Dr. Angelou. But in what ways do you believe the representation of Black men in librarianship contributes to diversity, equity, and inclusion in our profession?
Oh, wow. I think it's everything. I think it's absolutely everything. When I think about the work that we did in Memphis and being a part of that system, and Memphis is a city that is, it's a majority Black city, right? And many of the library locations are in places where, it's Black people, right? And for young Black men to be able to come into the branch and see Black men behind the desk, to see Black men, with a library shirt on, doing work. I think I can't tell you the number of stories where, boys would come in and say, "Oh man, like, tell me what you do. What's happening here?" And so I think number one is just for the community to see itself in an institution that is serving, at least in Memphis, is serving primarily Black communities. I think is very important. And then I would say beyond that, having Black men in the, sort of within the organization, we bring a rich amount of experience and skills and knowledge. We know our communities. We know how to reach communities in a way that perhaps other folks don't, right? And so being able to be a part of a larger team, I think just makes the library stronger and makes the sort of services and resources and work that we can do even better when we have Black men who are part of it. And, that was a huge thing for me. Sort of once I began to sort of fully understand what librarians were doing in the city and the impact they were having, I was trying to do everything I could to get, into high schools and even into, undergraduate, college, universities, to encourage folks, particularly brothers, to step into their profession.
I wholeheartedly agree with you because I have been a branch manager for a while and in my community. And I think it's important for young men to see me, to see something like a professional and to engage with them. Because, in my parents' generation, everyone lived in the same neighborhood. We don't have that pleasure today. So you don't get to see the doctors and the lawyers. you don't know them. So sometimes just in some inner cities, it's just good to see another Black male.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I think I work so hard with the South Carolina Library Association, with the library school, and maintaining our presence. Because I think that's important. So let's move on. Let me ask you this question. Now, you with the Urban Libraries Council, you've been there since what, 2023, I think?
Yeah, still fairly
Can
new.
you share with me, fairly new there, but that's okay. Can you share with me the purpose of the Urban Library Councils? Because I'm not really very familiar with it.
Yeah, so Urban Libraries Council is an innovation and action tank of North America's leading public library systems. And, we work to identify significant challenges facing today's communities. And we work to develop tools and techniques, practices that help libraries achieve stronger outcomes. And, we work in areas such as education, workforce and economic development, digital equity, race and social equity, and so on. And it's been really great to begin to understand more fully the work of ULC and the reach and the impact of ULC.
Friends, I think Ray has a frozen, so let's just give him a second to tap back in. So sorry. Yeah, so he's gonna come back in a second.
Okay.
Shamichael, in the meantime, while
Mhm.
Ray is reconnecting, could you tell us a little bit about the program you were running just before this?
Yeah. So at ULC, I have two portfolio areas. One is around economic opportunity. And so here we're thinking about all of the ways that public libraries either, one, support entrepreneurship. And we know that libraries do this in so many ways, right? That through our programs, through our research services and databases, through the equipment that we offer, and in some cases spaces, right? That some libraries are now moving into having maker spaces, having dedicated co-working spaces, and those sorts of things. And then on the other side, we're thinking about workforce development. So one of the things that we just wrapped up now has been a boot camp series that is designed to equip and empower librarians who want to support entrepreneurs. Today's track we were looking at, today was for a more advanced track of folks who have been sort of doing that work. And so we were looking at things like, number one, just kind of what are best practices. And it's been very interesting to sort of hear the ways that libraries are supporting entrepreneurs. There are, everything from partnering with local organizations such as SCORE, right, to help people do business plans and those sorts of things, to even more sort of, I would say, even more sort of nuanced things of doing feasibility studies and doing marketing plans, sort of identifying audiences there. So that's been cool. And like I said, some libraries are now moving into a space where they are looking at underutilized spaces in the library and asking themselves, how might we sort of redefine this space or reimagine this space in light of the sort of the hybrid worker, the remote worker, right? And so that's been very interesting. And then some cases, I think probably the most interesting thing that came out of the call today was many folks are saying, well, maybe we don't necessarily have the expertise right now to offer specialized assistance, but we could be just to sort of play a role of host, that we could, that we could be a space where entrepreneurs came once a month and gathered and encouraged each other, shared best practices and those sorts of things. And so it's been really exciting to sort of see that field continuing to grow and to see the ways that librarians are stepping into that space. I think particularly Black men stepping into that space. You think about the library as a space where folks are getting entrepreneur support and say, well, why would people come to the library for that? There are, all sorts of other organizations that are out there. And I think the sort of advantage that libraries have is that, number one, we have all these resources that we can sort of connect people to, right? We have collections, we have databases, right? We have this sort of trusted, presence in the community where people feel like they can come and be safe. And I would say, like, on top of that, and I'll stop it here, Ray, is that, what we're hearing from a lot of folks who are serving entrepreneurs is that they are saying, what they're hearing is that entrepreneurs are saying, the library is the place where I feel safe to come and actually ask questions, right? That maybe some other places, if I ask this question, I might come off as not sounding, smart or intelligent, but I know the library is going to be a place where they say, oh, well, hey, we got just a thing for you, right? And so, as more and more people step into, sort of the gig economy, particularly, we see the sort of rise of the gig worker in African American communities. It's going to be more and more important that we view the library in that lens.
Well, that sounds awesome, because that is my experience as well. Just seeing, and just the individuals who are coming in that need our services. There's so many things that we provide that most folks can't afford, especially when in the beginning part of a business. We have a lot of creative studios. So we are that space for the future. And I like that. So that sort of leads me to my question. So what are some of those, when individual libraries are planning or reimagining their space or redesigning their space, what are some of the key points they should be taking consideration? We know that people are coming for technology. Are there anything else that maybe managers and administrators should think about as they plan for these new facilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the work that we did in Memphis was a part of a much larger initiative that's playing out right now across the country. And I'll drop the link so that folks have it. But the initiative is called Reimagine the Civic Commons. And this initiative is playing out in 12 cities right now, which Memphis is one of them. And it's sort of more broadly looking at the role of public space in our communities, right? So we're looking at libraries, we're looking at parks, looking at community centers, we're looking at waterfronts, we're looking at plazas and squares, right? And sort of understanding the impact that having these spaces when they are well designed, well maintained, well managed, well funded, the impact that they can have in their communities. And so I think a couple of things that I pulled from my time in that initiative. Number one was sort of just understanding the importance of having outcomes, right? Of sort of knowing where we're going. And I believe Brother Watson is on the call from Las Vegas, and he does this, I think, as well as anybody does. But within Civic Commons, we had really sort of 4 outcomes that we were trying to achieve. And one was civic engagement. So this was sort of, how do we use this space to build a sense of community that brings people back into public life, right? To sort of make it compelling and inviting to want to come back into public life, where they can give shape to the city's future. The second outcome was around social economic mixing. And this was, how do we sort of design and create places in such a way where everybody feels a sense of belonging, that generate opportunities for shared experiences among people from different incomes and backgrounds, right? That is really, I think, one of the, as we move into a world and a society that is becoming increasingly polarized, is becoming increasingly privatized, that one of the sort of key value propositions of the public library is that it is the space where everyone can show up. I've got a close friend at the New York Public Library that says the library is the space that requires neither wallet nor soul. And it's just, every time I hear her say it, it's just so impactful, right? And so, what does it look like for us to create space where not only does everybody feel welcome, but there's also some sense of security and safety when they do that? And so I think those things are important on sort of how we situate, and so sort of how we situate the library in the greater community context.
I sort of liken libraries to what Dr. Martin Luther King called the beloved community, where you have a sense of inclusiveness, and it's a place where you can erase all those other ills of the world, racism, poverty, hunger, because we do everyday feeding types of activities here in my library. We provide food for those in need. We do, Richland County does something called We Talk Race and all kinds of things. So libraries are the institutions that are building that beloved community. Do you see any other things that we could do with our resources to continue that process of building a community where it's all inclusive? It's spreading the wealth to the masses.
Yeah, Brother Turner, I think the things that you lifted up, are vital and very, very important. I would say that there was, we talked earlier at the beginning of the conversation about that, no matter where you're sort of coming from as you're entering into libraries, that there's always something you can bring with you, right?
Mhm.
And, one of the things that I brought from the church, particularly the Black church tradition, was this idea that, everyone had some gift or skill or talent that they could sort of contribute to the greater community, right? And so within a church context, we were always trying to sort of help people sort of say, like, yes, this is a space where you can come and get a lot of things. You can come and get community. This is a space you can come and get, an inspirational message. This is a space where you can come and get connected to other community resources, right? But this is also a place where you can come and give, and we want you to see yourself in that way. And so that was one of the things that I brought to the library. And so, in all of our outreach efforts, we would always survey the community, and we were mindful to ask a number of questions, but no matter how we changed or adapted that survey, at the last two questions always remained the same. The second to last question was, what do you want to see in this library? Like, what do you need? What sort of program or event or opportunity or service or resource, like, what do you need to see here for this to sort of, for you to make this your own, for you to feel like this place has some relevance in your life, right? And people always gave us that. But that last question was, well, what can you bring to this space? Right? You're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a businessman. You're someone who's been in this community for 3-4 decades. You've seen how it's changed. What can you bring here, right? And the interesting thing that happened then, Mr. Turner, is that we ended up sort of doing a bit of a matching where we found 4 or 5 people who said, man, I would love to learn how to code. I would love to learn how to sew. And then there was always be one other person that answered the last question who said, hey, I'm a stylist, and I would have no problem once a month or once a quarter coming in and teaching a class, right? And in this way that people started to sort of see the library not only for what the many rich resources that it offered, but then started to see, oh no, this is my library. Like I can be here, and I can truly bring my full self to this space. My storytelling ability, my budgeting experience, right? And I think that sort of, at least in the Memphis context, it worked, and it's still working. And so I think when we're able to sort of create this sort of space where we can all show up in our full selves and find ways to contribute to things, that, man, we just have stronger communities because of that.
I certainly agree with you. I think if we pull together, I believe in partnerships. I try to reach out to every available partnership in my area to see how we can work together, how we can benefit their clientele as well as ours. We have an opportunity center here in North Charleston. They do a lot of things for the community, just like we do. So we try to either partner with their clientele, bring our clientele to meet theirs. And it's amazing what happens when you bring the community together. There's so much power and strength in that, and you get
Yeah,
so much done.
absolutely. I'll give you another example, and the pandemic sort of messed this one up, or not messed it up, but I think we all sort of have that "and the pandemic hit" story, right? But right down from our so I was managing our downtown branch, right? And just a few blocks from us downtown was the headquarters of AutoZone. So AutoZone is this, multi-billion-dollar corporation that, has, locations throughout the world, right? But their headquarters is there. And so I went there one day to just I was just going to give a presentation just to a few of their staff members. But while I was there, I learned that within the corporation, there was an IT department, like a global e-commerce department, right? Who was responsible for, getting the website up and making sure that all of the parts and supplies were there, people could order them correctly and that they would ship on time and those sorts of things. And it just so happened, Brother Turner, that at the same time that I was having that conversation, it was around the holiday season that I had been, me and lots of members of my team, we had been walking and visiting a lot of the holiday shops. And we were seeing, Black and brown entrepreneurs who were selling all sorts of goods, T-shirts, soaps, candles, jewelry, all these sorts of things. And we were trying to figure out like how we might be able to serve them better. And one of the things that we asked them was, like, how are you selling your stuff? Like, do you have a website or like what does it look like for you? And, folks were saying, oh, well, if you want to purchase my services or the things that I make, you go to my Facebook page or you go to my Instagram page. And it's like, but do you have a website? And it's like, no, I don't. And we started sort of asking people like, well, tell me about that. And people would say either they didn't have the expertise to pull a website together, they didn't have the time to pull it together, or they didn't have the financial resources to pull it together. So we said, okay, this is interesting. There seems to be a need here that no one else is meeting. Maybe there's space for us here in the library. And so when we had the conversation at AutoZone, one of the things that when we finally, and this was in a subsequent meeting, when we got in front of that e-commerce team, we said, hey, y'all, we've identified about 30 entrepreneurs in this city who make really amazing stuff. Like they are like the lifeblood of this city, but they don't have like a website. They don't have, an e-commerce platform. Would you all be willing to donate some of your time to come and work with these people? And a few people say, yeah, like I have no problem at all. Like come in and offering some guidance. I can't build it for them, but I can offer some guidance there. And so it was okay. Well, now we found people that have a need. We found a couple of individuals that are willing to meet that need. Now we just need a platform. Now we just need kind of some sort of, a website for them, right? And I have been a WordPress user for decades now. It was one of the things that I started experimenting with in the church back in 2010, like, blogging and microblogging and those sorts of things. So I knew that software very well, and I knew that it had an e-commerce, sort of element to it. And so I got on the phone with their corporate headquarters and I said, hey, you all have a product that can help entrepreneurs. Like, you have this e-commerce platform. Would you be willing to give us, a couple of licenses at a discounted rate? And they said, we can do you better than that. We can give you 50 free copies, just like free copies of the software. So now we sort of have the folks who have a need, we have folks who can meet that need, and then we now have a product that can help them, right? So right around this time the pandemic hit, but I think I'm not sure who else could have done that other than the library, right? That we're now, helping Black and brown entrepreneurs get their very first website so that they can sell their products. And it's an ongoing project, but I think it just speaks to the power of, as you said, the library as this space that is meeting needs, that is creating opportunity for folks.
Oh, I just want to say amen to all of that. Because I think that's our greatest gift back to the community, because we are the space where they can come and get help. Like the partnership you described with AutoZone, that's a miracle for some folks who are looking to start a business. And where else can you find that but in your public libraries?
Absolutely.
So I am so excited about hearing that. And I think just from your discussion, the things that you've done in your work, I think you will inspire a lot of people attending today to go back and look at ways that they can reach out into their communities and do more to make sure the library is a little more inclusive. So we're going to switch pages before we start taking some questions. So I know you are a civic and social impact strategist. You're a podcast host, and you're also an author. I think your first book was called Hacked, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
See, I went real far back. So do you have anything new that you're working on? I thought I heard Sierra say something about something that you're currently working on. Could you share the title and maybe what that's about with us?
Yeah, I'm in the last, I guess, 2 weeks of writing this book that has now been named Meet Me at the Library. It'll be published in the fall by Island Press. And the book really looks at the public library, the sort of social and civic impact of the public library, right? One of the things that has really fascinated with me is to think about the public library as a site of encounter, sort of a place where sort of everybody can show up. And one of the questions, I think one of the things that I think there were two things that I tried to be mindful of while I was in Memphis. One was I had a sign in my office that, and I tried to make sure that staff always saw this, but I had a sign in my office that asked, who's not coming through these doors? Because if we're comfortable with just the people who are coming through the doors, we're missing we're missing out on the opportunity to have a greater impact, right? And so we're constantly asking ourselves, who's not coming through these doors? And if we had to sort of, we did a lot of sort of persona building and empathy maps and sort of really trying to get a grasp on, is it sort of young Black creatives? Is it retirees that, or that are, in the area where all of these corporations and businesses are? But we're sort of always asking ourselves, who's not coming through the doors, and what can we do to at least, we can't guarantee that they will come in, but we can at least make sure they know about us, right? Because in some cases, I would say in a lot of cases for us, people just didn't know about the library, didn't know about library services. And so, and sort of from that question, a second question came up. And the second question was, okay, well, what happens if everybody actually shows up? Like on any given day, any given time, what happens if every segment of this community actually shows up? What sort of tension, beauty, collaboration could happen, if you had people from all ends of the political ideology, from different sort of race, religion? Like, what happens if everybody shows up? How do you create a space where you can sort of make that happen, right? And I started just sort of trying to study that, from a public space perspective. And I got really fascinated with shared experiences as a way of, breaking down walls, that when people ate together, knitted together, read together, that, maybe it didn't necessarily, bring people from one side to the other side, but it was just sort of, it created a moment where people could be in proximity with each other. And so the book, I started sort of just looking at instances of that. I wanted to see how people were using music and using food and using dialogue series and using these sorts of things to bring different parts of their community together, and sort of what sort of benefits and challenges came along with that. And then also, so the library that I was a part of in Memphis, of course, Memphis was a segregated system for many, many decades of its life. It wasn't actually until 1957 that Jesse Turner brings a lawsuit against the city of Memphis. And even that lawsuit sat silent really until 1960, where you had Black college students from Lemoyne and Owen College in Memphis that start doing sit-in demonstrations, right? And saying, hey, we're not leaving here until you open this library up, give us equal access here. And ultimately that leads to a trial that leads to the desegregation of the public library, other public spaces in Memphis. But thinking about sort of the library as the space that also is, sort of really critical in the sort of everyday civic life of a community, that it's through the public library that people are registering to vote, that they are learning about candidates, that they're learning about the importance of voting, that through the public library, people are understanding the importance of intellectual freedom and being able to have access to a variety of books, that through the public library, people are provided a venue by which they can sit down and discuss tough topics that are happening at sort of the hyper local level. What do we do about the trash in our community? What do we do about this politician that's become unresponsive? What do we do about rising rents, right? And sort of the library as a space where people can have those conversations. And so the book really sort of explores both that social and civic impact that I think uniquely the library is able to meet.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading that book because you bring out some points that we talk about as librarians all the time, that we are there to meet the people that we serve needs. And we meet them in so many different and positive ways,
Right.
especially with the political climate that we have now and the
Right.
issue of book banning, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a needed place.
I think also there, Mr. Turner, I think there's also, I want to say one other thing. I think there's an opportunity for us within librarianship to continue to have conversations around how do we talk about the social impact there, right? Because when we bring people together, like, I mean, certainly we know that if we teach a child how to read, we know that's a demonstrated impact, right? If someone comes in and they fill out a job resume, a job application, or they complete a resume, like, we know what happens there, right? But what happens when two people who are from total different parts of the community, from total different walks of life, come together and do a thing together? Like that, like, we know that is doing a thing at the individual level and is doing a thing at the community level. And I just think that there's an opportunity for libraries to get better at having that conversation about the value that we're providing at that level.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's one of the places that we could stand in this day and age to help foster a better social position for the average individual. Again, going back to Dr. King's beloved community, making sure that everyone needs are met. So, my friend, the hour is getting late. Can we ask some questions from the audience? You ready for it?
Yeah.
All right.
Do the best I can.
So, I think the very first question we have is coming from Gerald Moore. He said he's always interested in knowing what book or books the guest speaker is currently reading. And is there a book or author whose work has resonated with you, and enhanced your professional journey?
Yeah, I mean, so I am sort of in the thick of researching for the book, right? And I would say I think yeah, we do actually have the chat. Okay, so there are a couple of books that I'm really finding a lot of sort of interesting thoughts from. This first one I just put in the chat. It's called Companion to Public Space. Now, it's quite expensive book, and I have not found it in a public library setting just yet. But this book, the essays that are there are really, just they do a really interesting work in helping, really for me, helping me sort of think about public space in a different way. And I wish if I had to, it's I've got the book on another coffee table. Otherwise, I would break out a couple of things from that book that are standing out. Another book that I would recommend, and actually, Brother Kelvin Watson is actually in this book. I think he wrote the foreword to this book, but it's called Reimagining the Public Library. Now, it's kind of doing this through the lens of from an architecture perspective. But it is, here we go, right here. This is a really interesting book. If you are fascinated with sort of library design and how library design has changed over the years, this is a really interesting book that you might want to check out. It's there. I do believe that is the book that Kelvin wrote the foreword for. It's a really fantastic read there. And then I would say, sort of beyond sort of library space, I have a good friend in Seattle. His name's Eric Liu, and Eric founded an organization called Citizen University, and he has a number of programs that he does. One of them is called Civic Saturday, and Civic Saturday is essentially the civic analog to a faith gathering. So if you think about sort of the things that you might experience in a church, he's sort of taken those elements and remixed it with a civic perspective, and it's a wonderful thing to do. But Eric wrote a book, his most recent book, one of his more recent books. I think this may be the last book. It's called Become America, and I'll put it in here, and I'll stop with this one, also in the chat. And there are just a number of reflections on what does it mean and what does it look like for us to show up as citizens. As we think about citizenship as a verb, it's something that we do. It's something that we wear. what does it look like to actually show up in that space? And it's just a beautifully written book that has gotten me through some really great times. So I'll stop there.
Okay. We have another question. This is uh, from Quintus Pinder. I hope I didn't mess up your first name. Do you face any challenges where people may think of Black males as stereotypical or a certain stereotype?
I mean, the thing I love about Black men, man, Black men are beautiful, and we are not a monolith, right? And so, our interests are all over the place. Our educational backgrounds are all over the place. The way that we look at society is all over the place, and I just appreciate that. Um, and I think it's important for that to be. I think it's important for us to celebrate that diversity, even within us as Black men, right? One of the things that I did in Memphis for Black History Month, I was like, what if we sort of found sort of the unlikely parts of Black history that maybe wouldn't be necessarily lifted up in sort of traditional sense, and started researching Black goth culture, right? And it's like, well, how did you even sort of get there? But I found a student. I mean, there's a middle school across the street. I found a student who was like into like Black goth, and he found some musicians, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like this is really interesting. And so I think within Black male librarianship, I would encourage folks to be their authentic self, because you showing up as some half version of you is not going to do the library any good. If you are a nerd, if you are a geek, if you're an athlete, if you're a business, like whoever you are, show up in that full, to the best of I recognize that there are some places where you can't do that, where we can't necessarily be our full self. But to the degree that you can be your full self, do so, because your library system will be much stronger because of that.
Wholeheartedly agree with that. We have another question coming from Sharon. Since you've achieved this position, how do you feel you're perceived in the community? And I assume she's referring to your position as the director of at Urban Libraries Council.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that question?
I love the team at ULC. For me, I had to get comfortable very early, because I came into a church space not having a divinity degree. I came into a library space not having a library science degree, and that requires, number one, a little bit of confidence, right? But it also requires a lot of humility to be able to say, you know what, there are people who know a lot more than you, and the best thing that you can do is to take on sort of both a posture of confidence, but also a posture of humility. And so, what I love about the team at ULC, I told them from the jump, like, listen, man, like I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. I'm gonna, and I may ask you some questions a lot. I may ask you the same question. It may take a couple of times for it to, for the light bulb to go off. And the team has just been very wonderful in working with me and providing me the space. They sort of give me the room to be super creative in the areas where I excel. In the areas where I'm still learning, they help me. And I think the one thing that has helped me through it all is just being curious. That is probably the one thread that has ran through my entire life. I just never stop asking questions, doing it in a respectful and in a humble way, but always being a learner, always being a student.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Another question is, what advice do you have for Black men considering a career in librarianship? How should they prepare for a long and healthy career in the field?
I'm perhaps I'm not the best person to answer that. What I will say is that, from my time in working with the Memphis Public Library System, man, there are days where you just are elated at the sort of change that you're able to see because of the library, right? I mean, there have been moments where people came into the library and said, man, y'all helped me with my application. I just want to come back and let y'all know I got the job, right? And then there are other times where people come in at their absolute lowest, right? You know, when they've just lost a job or they've just lost their home, or there are times where people come in and the only friend they've ever had is a book, you know, that they've been struggling with some, you know, to tell someone about, you know, sexual identity, or they've been struggling to tell someone about an addiction, or, you know, some of the thing that's happening and where they can't talk to a person that can have a conversation with a book. And so, you know, what I think it requires in terms of longevity in the library is that you gotta, you know, and I'm talking from a public librarian perspective. This may not apply to academics or other spaces, but in a public library setting, when you are working with the public, be sure that you actually like people, right? Be sure you like people, man, because every day, what's guaranteed every day is people are going to come through those doors, right? And if you are someone who likes people, who can talk to people, who, you know, ideally can remember stories about people, their names, what they're, you know, what they like, what they're reading, man, there's going to always be a space for you. There's going to always be a space for you. I don't care like what part of the country you're in, what size of the library, that if you are a person who loves people, who loves helping people, who loves serving communities, you know, you're going to be good. And just know that, you know, you get the entire bundle of experiences when you work with the public, right? But I consider that, Brother Turner, I consider that a great privilege and a great honor that we be able to serve our community in that way. I mean, how many other organizations can say that they show up in the way that the public library shows up? So for us to be able to do what we do on a day in and day out basis as Black men, and as just Black people, through a library, it really is a beautiful thing.
It is. I agree. You're getting some wonderful comments in the field,
Oh, fantastic.
in the comment chat. Yeah, because that is important. That is what we are here for. We have another question. This is from Heather. I love the idea of community members as library's most valuable collection. The resident skills, talents, and viewpoints a library can celebrate are endless. And what better way to ensure we're reflecting the community? I think it's brilliant. You add a time and talent question to surveys. How do you encourage those talented folks to actually come in and hold workshops, lectures, and etc.?
You know, it is, I don't want to make it seem like it is just this super glamorous process. It's messy, right? Because you're dealing with people, right? But at the end of the day, it is relationship building. You know, once and I think, you know, we're probably all guilty of this, and this is why you sort of got to make sure that you have a lot of strengths, you know, and this is a thing that I learned from the church. Once you ask people what they are passionate about, you have to follow up with those people, right? Because if you do the survey and the people fill out the survey and you never follow back up with them, and you go back to them and ask them again, they're going to remember that you never followed up with them from the first time, right? So I think whenever you're ready to engage in that, it's important to sort of ease your way into it. You know, you may not be able to do that at the largest community outreach event that you have. You might want to do that at, you know, where there's going to be a smaller crowd, right? And make sure that, you know, build this into the process. Make sure that you're able to follow up with those folks. And then once they follow up, here's what we did, Brother Wade. We had what we called a ladder of engagement, right? And this was a way of sort of helping people ease their way into it. So the first step on the ladder was, hey, just show up to a library program. Like, I mean, just come to one of our programs, see how we do it, see how we try to make sure we include everybody, that, you know, we make sure that there's not any one person that's sort of dominating the context, all these sorts of things. So just show up at a program. All right. And then, you know, once you get comfortable doing that, the next step is, okay, bring somebody next time. Bring a friend, bring a family member, bring a coworker, right? And you consistently do that. And then once we see that you're doing that, okay, next time, why don't you show up a little early? You know, like, hey, we recognize that you love this particular, like you love talking about finances. So we got this library, we got this one program that happens once a month on finances. Could you get here 5 minutes early or stay 5 minutes late to like set some chairs up or whatever, right? And people, you know, you have to sign waivers and stuff, but people would generally do this, right? And once you
Right.
see that people are doing that, then you present an opportunity to say, hey, well, would you be interested in co-planning this with us? Like we'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on what else we might add. What books are you reading about this sort of thing, right? And so that sort of step, this sort of gradual ladder, we found was an excellent way of getting people engaged. Now, some people will be able to just step in right away and start doing a thing, right? Particularly organizations. But with individuals, sometimes that sort of stepping up sort of way is something that really, really worked for us. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. Now we have another question from Cindy. Shamichael, I love your expansive thinking about libraries. Have you considered pursuing a PhD? If so, what area or inquiries pique your interest?
Yeah, man, I'm school. I am burnt out from school. But if I did though, you know, so a lot of what I mentioned earlier, Brother Ray, this idea of the library as a site of encounter, right? And what happens
Right.
if everybody shows up. And a lot of that conversation is sort of rooted in this theory known as contact theory, was, you know, kind of like, you know, getting people to be in close proximity with each other generally leads to people developing more favorable opinions of folks, right? But that isn't always the case. Sometimes when you bring people into proximity with each other, it reinforces negative stereotypes. It actually sort of drives a wedge between people rather than bringing people together. And so I think what I would study is what does it look like to bring, particularly as we become more polarized, more divided, what does it look like to create a sort of space within a library setting where you can truly achieve a sort of diversity, right? And then once you achieve that, how do you measure that in sort of a way that really speaks to the impact of the work that you're doing?
Okay. So this is our last question from the audience, from Kyle. Can you elaborate on how you have been able to not compromise your faith in your professional journey amongst those who may be faithless? That's a powerful question.
I don't push my belief on anyone. I don't even really talk about it a lot. What I do is, like, again, I recognize that the path to be able to step into the role that I stepped into at the library, to be able to have the opportunity to go to Harvard for a year where they essentially paid me to show up, to be able to work at the Urban Libraries Council in a director position. I just don't think I'm that smart, bro. Like, I just don't think I know that many people, right? I mean, I know I'm an intelligent brother. I work hard, but I just feel like that God got my back. I just feel like, man, I just feel like there's no way that I would be where I'm at right now if there was not some divine work happening in the background and also in the foreground. And when I have an opportunity to share it, I do. But, you know, outside of that, I just try to be open so that, you know, people feel like they can talk to me. And I think particularly in the public library setting, that's very important, man, that you just open up a space where people can actually talk.
This is true. This is true. And I feel the same way. I'm a man of faith myself. And I just know that some days I can't do what I do if it wasn't for that higher being. So yeah, I really appreciate you saying that and sharing that with us. Well, our time has flown, but it's been the most interesting conversation. And I really appreciate your insights and your thoughts that you shared with us today. You have inspired me to do more to make sure my library, my branch, as well as my system is doing more to be inclusive, to be thinking about what we can do for our community. So I just want to say thank you again. And I ask that God continue to bless you in your life's journey and your work, because I do believe they are intertwined. So appreciate you, my brother.
Thanks for having me. This has been a great opportunity. Thank you so much.
Good, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Dr. Cook, we're going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Thank you both so much. This has been a really powerful conversation. And like our friend Gerald said, so many takeaways and things to think about and ways to think about what we're doing in the library and what we should be doing, right? And I really, really appreciate this dimension of faith that you've brought into the conversation, because I think we don't talk about that enough. So I just want to thank you both for sharing your time and expertise. Shamichael, welcome to the Baker family. So glad to have you here. And thank you all so much for joining us. This is the fourth of five sessions in this series. We conclude next week. And we're getting so much great feedback, and it's just wonderful to see. So I really appreciate everyone's time and attention and engagement. It's really beautiful to see, and we're grateful. All right, so everyone, be well, be blessed, enjoy, and we hope to see you for our last session next week.
Very good.